Man, I love that. I'm going to do that countdown almost every time. That's a lot of fun. Makes it seem epic. A countdown, a good countdown makes everything seem epic. But thank you for everybody for being here and for checking this Summit Success Series out. Just a heads up, though, this is going to change a little bit starting next week. We're going to be moving the concept of the Summit Success Series over to our Tuesday show, which is the Founders Focus. And that's going to be much more tactical. We're going much more deeper into our frameworks, our Summit Success frameworks that we implement with our clients and their businesses and help them grow and create businesses that can sustain growth for a long time and sustain a healthy lifestyle as well. And then our Summit Success Series, like today, will be much more around starting with you. That's actually one of our first pillars in our framework. It's the start with you, because founders and business owners, high achievers, really, it's deep, the type of introspective work that you have to do, because you're always, especially if you're growing a business, you're always going to be the ceiling that your business cannot grow past. So you always have to start with you. You have to remove your biases, remove these mental blocks, and improve upon them all the time. And then learn how to surround yourself with some amazing people. So that's what the Summit Success Series is going to be mostly focused on for Thursdays. And we have some really fun, and I dare say talented guests lined up for this one as well. So really excited about that. And then if you haven't already, make sure that you go to yplsummit.com, yplsummit.com, and get your tickets for the Young Professionals Leadership Summit, October 19th in Toronto. And again, it's $60 for in-person, $20 for virtual. So if you can't make it to Toronto, totally fine. Virtual it is. And virtual is going to be a lot of fun as well. I think it's going to be great. We have some amazing guests. We have a great flow. You're going to get a ton out of it, whether you're, new into a leadership position, or you're a growing business, you're a growing business founder, you're a growing business leader. Is going to be perfect for you when you're starting to grow your team, what to look for when you're leading people, how to identify who should be on your team, who shouldn't be on your team, and how to grow people, right? How to grow yourself. So that's going to be it's going to be a really, really good event. We're really excited about that. But for today, we're going to kind of continue on the path of going over our talent density framework. So bringing in the right people. And there's something really big that I believe in. And this is something it hasn't been very recent, but semi-recently, we'll say, just from experience now, working with so many other business owners, being a business owner myself, is especially when we're starting out, we get so caught up in like the tactics and the specifics and marketing, your product, your ICP messaging, how do I use AI, how do I use SEO, all that other kind of stuff. And that stuff's really, really important. Don't get me wrong. But what I've found is that the most important aspects of growing a successful business and a lasting successful business really comes down to two things, and that's people and your culture. People and culture. Because if you have the right people, you're going to end up developing the right product. Right? If you have the right innovative people, the people that want to serve the clients, serve your customers, and have a passion for what they do, you're going to, as a byproduct, you're going to create something great for them, and you're going to experiment. You're going to figure it out, right? And also, if you have great people, you're going to attract other great people, right? You're going to constantly improve. You're going to check each other. You're going to have open conversations. You're going to be transparent. And then with the culture, it just fosters more and more of that. And especially if you look at the culture and the brand, really the employer brand in that respect, it comes down to those two things. So today we're going to start part one of our talent density framework. And again, this is going to be, I'm kind of debating if it's going to be 5 or 6 part series. We'll see. I don't want to get too carried away, so we'll probably keep it to 5. But really today, it's going to seem very surface level. It's going to seem very novice almost. But this first aspect is defining your ideal key player. So defining the role is probably the most looked over aspect of hiring in a key player. And again, today we're going to be talking mostly for those smaller businesses. So you have 5 people on your team, maybe 10 people on your team. And this could even work, obviously, that this concepts will work if you have 20 or 50 people on your team, because key players always exist. But when you're that small business owner, you have 5 or 10 people on your team, everybody you bring in at that point is a key player. If you have 5 people on your team, you hire one person, you're increasing your employee count by 20%. That's huge. Even if that person is just an assistant or a VA or whatever it is, that is a key player, right? And we'll kind of define what a key player is here. But one of the big reasons that we focus so much on this, defining the roles, defining who could be successful in these roles and who are they, really defining who they are,
is because it helps you create that consistent hiring process. If you know who you're looking for, if you know what the end result is, you can work backwards and create at least a much more clear process, and a process that sets you up to be more likely to be successful when you're hiring. Because again, you're dealing with people. There's always going to be room for error. Let's admit it. But that doesn't mean you don't do everything you can to increase the odds, increase the chances of your success. So what does it look like if you don't have an inconsistent hiring process? And some of these are going to seem like, yeah, no shit. But this one's probably the most obvious, is wasted resources. And resources being time, money, bandwidth, opportunity, and patience. So time and money are obvious. You waste time hiring somebody, sourcing them, bringing them in, interviewing them, training them, onboarding them, and then they don't work out. A lot of time. And in that case, a lot of money, right? You waste a lot of money. You waste a lot of ramp up time. You waste a lot of opportunity, right? You waste the opportunity, not just of that individual could be utilizing coming in, but opportunity that your team could be using when they are hiring and training these people. You as the founder, if you have that small team and you're bringing that person in, you're training them, you're putting the processes in place for them, and then they just don't work out, you're missing out on opportunities that you could have gone and sought out if you weren't focusing on that. So you're missing a lot of opportunities, and bandwidth and patience obviously are big as well. You have a bunch of people you bring in that don't work out. Like, I can't do this anymore. I'm losing patience. And then you run into some big issues that we're going to be kind of going over in a minute here as well. It has a big negative impact on culture and morale. And this one, I've seen these types of conversations happen in a few businesses now. Ones that we've worked with, and most of the ones that I've had myself, is when you have people that come in, you hire 2 or 3 people at a time, and your churn rate's really high. Maybe on average, they last maybe 3 to 6 months. In your team, you can start to see it. They don't even get to know people anymore. They don't even bother to ask them questions. They don't even bother to invite them in because they just think they're going to be gone in 6 months. So like, what's the point? And then they have those conversations more and more, and it negatively impacts everybody in the business, and negatively impacts their performance. The people coming in, you could have had a player come in and they feel this shitty energy, right? They hear these conversations, right? Somebody even says, "Oh, you lasted 7 months. Cool. Good for you." And that person's thinking like, what? That's the average of people lasting around here. Like, what am I doing here? Right. So it has a huge negative impact on culture and morale. And again, that's of current employees and future employees. And then you fall into this warm body syndrome. That's kind of what I was alluding to before. It can cause standards to lower as a byproduct. So warm body syndrome, that's where we'll paint a picture for you. You're a founder and you've been running the sales process. You want to bring in, a sales professional to come in and start taking over some of those processes and some of that workload. You bring them in, and first one doesn't work out. Okay, I'm going to try this again. Bring somebody else in, they don't work out. But while they're not working out, while you're training these people and time's going by, 2, 3, 6 months goes by, you still haven't got that role filled by somebody who's the right fit. All of a sudden your business is still growing. And you're like, crap, I can't keep doing this stuff. I need to bring somebody else in, right? And you just just hire 2 or 3 people, one of them will work out, right? You're just getting people in place, right? And you lower the standards so that you can get that role filled. And especially if you do have people on your team, they see those standards are being lowered. They're holding these people to a lower standard. So all of a sudden their standards for themselves start to lower, right? And this is super, super common, right? You just get frustrated, or maybe you waited too long to start this hiring process, to start this recruiting process and sourcing process. And you get in a hurry. Okay, I just need people in there. Okay, I need to hire 2 customer service people. I don't care. Do you know how to speak English? Can you talk? Okay, cool. Get in here. Do it. Right. And that is a super big trap that you do not want to fall into. Wrong button. There we go. Inconsistent data creating difficulty in making future decisions. If you do not have a consistent hiring process, how do you know what works? How do you know what could work in the future? All right. And then we hear this a lot. Okay, we hired 5 people. Well, that 3 people ago worked. So let's just do that. So you're basing your decision off of a pool of data that consists of 1. That is not enough to make good, educated, calculated decisions, right? You want to have this process consistent. It's just like any other process, like a sales process, marketing process, fulfillment process, whatever it is, manufacturing process. You want it to be consistent so that you can make improvements, you can identify leaks and opportunities and improve upon it. If you do something different every time, the only thing that you can improve upon is doing it consistent, right? Which is still a great place to start. But You want to have much more pinpointed. Okay, we see that this initial screening interview, we're getting a lot of people that are coming through that. So let's see if we can button that up a little bit, right? So you need to be consistent so you can pinpoint those areas that you can improve upon. All right, and this is where we get this is where I probably get, I would say the second most amount of pushback, where you get founders that are like, well, we hired our first 10 people like this. We're just going to, why don't we just keep doing it? They got us here. So why not keep doing it? I hired my cousin's friends who was at his wedding once, that I met somebody who worked at the bar, and it worked out. Right. So why don't we just keep hiring that way? And this is where, I'm going to keep it PG. I just want to yell at them a little bit, because what got you here is not what's going to get you there. And we hear that a lot. Right. I want this type of success that's different than the success I have right now. So I'm just going to keep doing the same thing, but I'm going to try a little harder to get there. It's not how it works. If you want a different type of success, you're a small business, you want to grow, you want to expand into different markets, you want to expand into different products, you want to keep innovating your products, you want to grow, you want to go to other countries or whatever it is, you want to start a second business, you got to do something different. You have to do something a little bit different. And as you grow, a lot of that is just conforming to a system and a process that you can incrementally improve upon, and create these little experimental loops that you can continue to improve going forward, instead of just doing the same thing over and over again. And this is why I love this saying, is the biggest enemy of success sometimes is success itself. This worked before, so we're just going to keep doing it, but I'm just going to try really hard. Instead of 8 hours of sleep, I'm going to get 6, and I'm going to be a badass. Well, that's great until your business keeps growing, and then that doesn't cut it anymore. And then you say, okay, I'm going to sleep 5 hours a night, and then you get burnt out, and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go back to my corporate job. It's not how it works, right? If you want a different type of success, you have to do something different. So the first step here in this case, right, you want to hire some great individuals. You want to hire your key player, right? But first, let's do this. Let's actually figure out, let's make sure that we're on the same page as far as like what actually defines a key player. And I've got asked that before, like, what do you mean by key player? Right. And we kind of talked to that about that before, but let's get a little bit more clear on it. A key role is a success in this role has a huge impact on the success in the business, and vice versa. Failure in this role has a drastic negative impact on the business itself. So again, like I said, let's use this example. You have 5 to 10 people on your team. You hire one person. That's 10 to 25% increase in your employee count. That individual has a huge impact on your business, even if it's just, like I said, even if it's just an assistant. So you're a founder. You need to hire an assistant, somebody to take over your books, and they're not jiving with you. They're not speaking your language. They don't understand the role. They're taking a lot longer to ramp up. They're taking longer to organize your calendar and that kind of stuff. Again, I used this example before. That can have a huge impact on the business. You hire a sales manager, somebody who's not used to, maybe managing a business, managing a sales leadership position in a business of this size, a business of this focus, of this tenacity that changes all the time, that experiments. They're more used to working in a company, a bigger company that has processes and systems that have been in place for decades almost, right? The failure in that role has a huge impact on your business. You don't bring in the revenue. You can't, put that money to innovate your product. You can't put that money to marketing. You can't hire new people. It has a huge impact on the business. That's a key role. They represent the business in the public eye. So somebody, again, just to go back to sales, you have a BD individual or a account management individual who's out there customer facing. They're representing themselves. They're posting on social media. You got to worry about that now. And if they're not the right person, they're representing your company in the wrong way, and they're kind of dulling the brand. They're dulling the message. That can have, even if it doesn't have like an immediate negative impact, it could have a long-term negative impact as far as like your brand recognition. And if they're in, specific regions, it could affect your market penetration in that specific region, and you could get outperformed really easily. Huge impact on your business. And their performance dictates a majority of the client product service lifecycle. If you're a service-based, or maybe you're a consultant or something like that, you bring in another consultant or a coach, that individual dictates a large portion of your fulfillment, of the idea of getting referrals in the back end, of somebody re-signing, of how your product is perceived. They go out and tell the world, that client goes out and tells the world, well, this is what they do, and it has nothing to do with, or is not in line with what you really do, with the messaging that you put out there, with your marketing, with your promise, with your guarantee. That's huge. Absolutely huge. Right. So key roles, it's very important that we are really clear on what a key role is. And again, if you're a bigger business and you're somebody who hires, let's say you do customer service for Netflix or something like that. You run a third-party customer service business, and you do customer service for some of these bigger companies. Okay, your hiring process will be a little bit more. Like there's been a process in place for a long time. There maybe isn't as many steps, right? I get it. But for key roles, you always want to kind of go back and redo some of these steps that we're about to go over. All right. Now, that first step, and this is what we're really going to be focused on today, is defining the role itself. Now, this is where a lot of people get in trouble, and this is where a lot of people skip. They get lazy, right? And they do that a few different ways, right? What this is not just a title, right? A sales manager over here is different than a sales manager over here. A VP of marketing is different than a VP of marketing over here. A chief people officer over here is different than a chief people officer over here. It's not a title. It's not just a title. This is where I see a lot of founders get into trouble. What do you need? We need a sales manager. Okay, let's go hire a sales manager from somewhere, right? Again, that means something completely different. It's not just a title. And it's not just a list of activities. It's not just a list of day-to-day buttons that they need to press. Okay, you can train and coach people and put processes in place for those minuscule day-to-day activities, right? It's not your chance to be lazy and think you're going to hire someone to come in and create the role. This is kind of goes back to alludes to what I was talking to before. You don't want to just hire somebody in and say, hey, okay, we need to create a sales organization. Come on in. All right, it's yours. Go and make it. I'll check back in with you in a week. I've seen this happen a lot. That sounds ridiculous, but I've seen it happen a lot, where they hire somebody in, they hire a VP from another organization, a big organization. They come in, they're like, hey, this is what we need to do right now. This is, we need to get to this much revenue. Go create a sales team for me, or go create our customer service process for us, right? Now, yes, you do what you want to do is hire people smarter than you in their particular disciplines, and then let them take over, let them take the wheel. But when you're bringing them in at this point, again, when we're defining this role, they need to be held accountable to something. There needs to be clear expectations. There needs to be a very clear outcome that they need to create. It needs to be guided by the values and principles and the mission and vision that you have as the founder, right? You don't just bring people in and just let them go. It's not your chance to be lazy, right? And it's not a random list of skills and attributes that sound nice, but have here's the first spelling mistake. I did pretty good. I thought there'd be a few more by now. A random list of skills and attributes that sound nice, but have no correlative meaning to the specific role itself. And I see this a lot too, where founders, they'll read a book. They'll read, Think and Grow Rich or something like that. I don't know. That was the first one I could think of. And they think, okay, these are the most important attributes for somebody to be successful. Just go find those people, right? Now, obviously, you can take those into consideration, right? But they're not just random, right? Don't just because they sound nice, all right? That's the same thing when we're working with clients and creating their core values. A lot of people just put words that sound cool, but really they have no intention of following through with them, or don't even innately really know what they mean, right? So it's not just a random list of skills and attributes that you just throw on, a description, a job description, and then you're like, oh, I hope this is kind of close to what we need, right? But what we are going to do is we're going to go through this is going to be a 4-step defining process that we're going to go through to really clearly identify who is going to be most successful in this role. We create what we call a role avatar, right? And it starts with outcomes, experience, characteristics, skills, and strengths. So step 1, what does this role need to accomplish? So what are the outcomes it needs to create in the next 6 to 12 months? Now, your timeline, this is an average timeline. Your timeline, again, if you're a smaller business, you're fairly new, you're more innovative, you're more experimental. Okay, it might be 3 months. And if you're somebody who's a little bit more established, it might be 12 to 18 months, right? But you want to be really, really clear on what does this role, especially if it's a newer key role, what does this role need to accomplish? What is the outcome that it needs to create? And this should be based on your current strategy and initiatives, right? What does this role need to accomplish that gets you closer, right? Or accomplishes this next step in the strategy towards your vision, the strategy towards this big goal, this big vision that your company has, right? You don't want to just like, okay, get the revenue up to this. That's a good start. That might be part of it, right? But you want to be specific, right? You want to be specific. And I go back to the example I gave about the sales manager. A sales manager who has worked at a larger business has held large teams accountable to already established outcomes. Their strategies and their visions and missions and their current initiatives are a little bit further out, right? Maybe they're working on year or 3 years at a time initiatives. That skill set, that experience, that type of characteristics that it takes is much different than a sales manager who's worked in a startup, who is constantly innovating, constantly testing, has sold products that maybe don't have 10,000 reviews online, who don't have a ton of referrals to base off of. They're selling something new and they're holding people accountable. They're creating a process that's new, that hasn't been done before. Those are very different. But on paper, if you just do a quick skim on paper, they kind of look like this one looks better. This one looks like, okay, they've managed 1,000 people before, and the company was $500 million, right? That looks good, right? But that's not the specific outcome that you want to create, that this person needs to create, right? So you need to be more specific. So that's just one example of many. And again, this is not a list of activities. It's clear outcomes, right? If you find somebody who can create the outcome, and we'll define that a little bit more clear on what that would look like, the activities are irrelevant. You can teach them the activities, right? If your business uses HubSpot and they're more used to using Salesforce, you can teach them how to use HubSpot. Don't worry about that, right? And we're going to talk about separating those two things in a minute here. Then you want to think micro before macro. And this is where, again, a lot of you'll see founders in when they're first hiring for these key roles, where they'll miss out a little bit, or they'll kind of overreach. You want to think micro as in, again, I'm talking to small business owners, right? If you have a sales process that only has maybe a year or even 2 of proof of concept, you've had a playbook that's only been in place for 6 months or something like that, right? Maybe you don't hire a VP of sales right away. Maybe you hire somebody who maybe got passed up for a sales leadership position, but has shown that they can be successful in this specific space, in creating something new and selling something that is a little bit newer to a market, right? And you bring that person in to help you as the founder refine the process, right? And hold them accountable to it, set really clear expectations, and have them build it with you, right? Instead of hiring this big manager or VP or director or whatever it is, and then say, yeah, build a huge team for me. So think micro first if you're at that point. Now, if you're a little bit bigger of a company, again, if you have 20 to 50 people on your team, then still I wouldn't go for these huge whales, right? That have ran thousands of people or 500 people teams, right? Find somebody who can who has accomplished something very specific that is as relatable as possible or as close as possible to what you're trying to do, and bring them in and build them up. Right. So think what are those specifics that they need to accomplish? Don't get too macro with it. Right. Step 2. What experience does this candidate need to have? So what are some of the non-negotiables as far as experience that they need to have? Right. So I'll go back to this example just to make it consistent for everybody. Let's say that they have experience running. So use a different one, customer service. Let's say they have experience running, a large customer service team, right, for multiple different industries, for multiple different types of clients, let's say. All right, so they have really good knowledge, they have really good experience in vast numbers of industries, dealing with very different issues, training people constantly on new, on new fundamentals, on new softwares, and all this kind of stuff. And there's one I worked for during COVID. Actually, I worked for a company that was they were contracted by Netflix to do their customer service, and then immediately they were pivoting and started working for Nike. So we had to train a team to go from working for Netflix to Nike, right? So that's very specific. That's some great experience, right? But if you're looking for somebody to come in and create a process from scratch themselves, right? Or if you're looking for somebody who's really good at building departments, right? Building teams, if that's what you need, then that would be a non-negotiable, right? That would be a non-negotiable for you. So decide what are the non-negotiables for experience, because there's going to be some experience that is just kind of nice to have, right? Like industries. If you're looking for somebody who's built teams before, right? And you have somebody who's built teams before and they meet all these other criteria, but maybe they're not in your industry, right? Maybe the specific industry isn't a need to have. Maybe it's more of a nice to have. But building teams is a non-negotiable. So decide what those non-negotiables are as far as what experience they need to have, right? And then what type of experience weighs the most and what weighs the least, right? So experience building teams, experience in the industry, right? If you would rather, if you want to way higher building the team, right? Then that goes up here, specific industry down here. You would pick this person over somebody who's kind of here. They have pretty good experience. They've built some teams before. At least they were on a team that was built from scratch, right? And they got passed up for a management role, right? But they were in your industry, at least within your industry, maybe not specifically in what you are. Like, let's say you do siding, like you sell siding and roofing, but they've worked in windows before. Pretty close, right? You would pick this person who's had specific experience building teams over the industry than this person, right? So make sure that you weigh out what experience means more than others, right? And it generally comes down to what is most efficient for you to train and coach in-house to fill the gap. So again, if it's somebody who doesn't have experience on the specific CRM that you're using, right, but they have experience building the teams, that's something that you can train on. It's much more difficult training somebody to learn how to build a team, right, when you are still learning that yourself, right? So that's a big thing to consider too. What can I train these people on? What are we capable of giving to them? What kind of gaps are we capable of filling for them that, you know, maybe we don't need to, or maybe that we're not willing to, right? In the future, we're not willing to put resources to it. So that's a really, really important thing to recognize there. Now, step 3, what are the characteristics this candidate needs to showcase? So characteristics, we're talking about their attitude, we're talking about their values, talking about their principles, right? So what characteristics does our culture, our business, our clients value the most? This is big for service-based companies, especially if they're client facing. If you have a very particular brand, if you have a very particular image that you're trying to uphold, so whether you like him or not, if you know who Andy Elliott is, if you don't, look him up. He has a very specific persona. He has a very specific brand, right? So he's looking for people who can fit that mold and be consistent with that brand. So what characteristics would be most specific to fulfilling upon that type of persona to keep things consistent, to make sure that, you know, either they're signing up because they saw Andy Elliott on stage or Andy Elliott on ads or whatever it is, they did a couple of his courses or whatever. You want to make sure that that's consistent. You want to make sure those characteristics are what the clients are looking for and are consistent with that. And that's what they value the most. And then again, same thing as with the experience. What are the non-negotiables, right? In our business, in Summit Chasers, one of our non-negotiables is transparency. You have to be transparent. You have to be willing to take feedback, and you have to be willing to give it. And we don't leave anything. We don't leave any of our cards hidden. That is a non-negotiable. Right. Another non-negotiable could be for some people, if they got to be outspoken. Again, if there's somebody you're going to be very public facing, there's somebody who's going to be in their content, who's going to be on podcasts and that kind of stuff, you have to be very charismatic. Right. So being very charismatic would be more important than problem solving in some cases. And if you're hiring like an engineer, or you're hiring a customer service, you're hiring somebody to create something, problem solving would be much higher, right, than being charismatic. Right. So you want to weigh these things against each other. Right. And again, this is very closely correlated with your business values and principles. And that goes back to the example I gave you with Mr. Andy Elliott. Step 4, what strengths do we need and what weaknesses can we mitigate or improve upon? Now, this is a big one because so many, and even hiring managers, recruiters, a ton of them that I've worked with, they hire for lack of weaknesses rather than strengths. And you want to hire for strengths, not lack of weaknesses. Weaknesses, you can mitigate them. You can coach them. You can do things to make sure that they don't get in the way, right? Unless they're glaring and they're part of your non-negotiables, right? All these steps obviously have to correlate together. But if you're looking for somebody who needs to build a team, or you're looking for somebody who needs to create a process, right? And their strength is literally creating processes from scratch for products or services that aren't innately really popular in the market yet. If that's their strength, but you see that they're like really not charismatic, or you see that they don't know how to use the CRM that you're using, or they don't know how to, they're not good on, like, I don't know, they're not good in Microsoft Excel or Excel, whatever. Hire them for their strengths, right? You can mitigate their weaknesses. You can maybe hire for their weaknesses if they are that strong in those areas that you really need. They can be trained, whatever it is, but you want to hire for strengths. Hire based on, this is, what can I leverage? Right. So that's the next point here. What strengths will be the most effectively leveraged in your business? Right. So if they have a strength of they're really good at go-to-market strategy, or their strength is they're really good at, develop their product development itself, right? Where can they be placed, or how can the strength be used most effectively to leverage in your business, right? And find a way to find those strengths, right? So this is a big one that I've seen a lot of, is they're like, they're really strong here, and this is what they need, but man, it'll be annoying because they're not really charismatic, or like they seem like a Debbie Downer, or whatever it is. It's like, but if they're really strong over here, find a way to leverage their strengths, especially if you're a small business, right? You want masters at this point. If you're kind of getting to that next point of scale, you want masters in their discipline, right? And that's why you want to be really, really clear on what they need to accomplish in the next 6 to 12 months, because what are those strengths that are going to be most crucial to accomplish this outcome in the next 6 to 12 months? And small business, the next 6 to 12 months could make or break your company. So if you're going to pass up on somebody who's a master at something just because, maybe they have BO or something, right? That was a weird example, but you know what I mean. You don't want to do that, right? You want to be able to leverage their strengths, right? So if you go through these 4 steps, answer these really, really clearly, be really, really, really specific, and take your time with this. Get other people in, people that you trust, people that you have, high believability, and take your time and go through these, right? Create this avatar, right? Starting from step 1, what does this role really need to accomplish in the next 6 to 12 months, and align it with your initiatives and your strategies. This also gives you a pretty good perspective on, looking at your strategy. Is this the right strategy? Are we going in the right direction? Right. And you might find that, this isn't what I thought that we needed to hire for this, but really, really we need this. We really need to get to this revenue point before we really even need to hire a customer service manager. Right. But really, really be super clear on what the outcome they need to create. And then use the next steps to kind of create that avatar. What is this person? What is this avatar? What are the attributes? What are the skills? What are the experience that would increase the chances of this person successfully executing upon these initiatives and creating the outcome for your business? Be really, really clear on that, right? And then the next step, where are they? And this is what we're going to talk about in the next part. But just really, really quickly, this is where, don't just put out an Indeed ad. Obviously use your network, but if you're hiring, if you want to find the best person, don't just look in one place, right? Some of them are most likely employed. They're currently employed somewhere. A lot of top performers, they're top performers for a reason. They're probably employed, right? And that's okay if they are. You can find those ones that got passed up for opportunities. And a lot of times, if you look at bigger companies, they get passed up for opportunities because of political reasons. They're great performers. Maybe this don't fit their specific, values and their specific culture, right? And you can get great people that way, really, really great people that way. What platforms do they spend the most time on? Are they on LinkedIn a lot? Are they on Instagram? Are they on TikTok? Whatever it is, what platforms do they spend their most time on? What events, workshops, courses would they attend? Going to these types of events, going to workshops, going to courses, even if you don't innately, need the course itself, but these are great places to network and find great talent. Because if you're going somewhere where people are investing in themselves, to improve their lives, to improve their skill sets, you're going to meet some great people. You're going to create some great relationships. Now, you might not find somebody right away where you're like, yoink, you're on my team now, but you can create those relationships going forward, right? You can get somebody in your network, and you can stay in touch with them, and eventually they might be ready to move on, right? And you have somebody really, really great in your pocket there. So building that bench, so to speak. And where in your current network would they be attached to? So when I say where they be attached to, so who in your network would have good in their network? Who in your network could you utilize their network, if that makes sense? Somebody in your network, how could you utilize them to source these other people, right? Somebody that you trust, bring in referrals from them. Hey, you used to work at, we had one of our partners, she used to work at Yahoo, or she still works at Yahoo, actually. It's like, when we're looking for great BD individuals, or when we're looking for other great coaches and consultants, we utilize her network, right? So whose network could you utilize, right, to find some good talent and at least start to create those relationships, right? And would they likely be working with recruiters? There's some, especially those that don't have these really, really long, extensive experience, lists on their resumes. The resume is not super deep, but they have some experience, they have some education, they have some success. They just don't have the clout, what the kids say, that follows their resume around. A lot of those types, they work with recruiters, right? They work with recruiters because it's not as obvious that maybe they don't have the network quite yet, and they don't have this bolsterous resume that kind of speaks for itself, right? So really, once you have this clearly defined, what is this person? You almost want to feel like you know them, like you can picture them, and you can have a conversation with them. Who would be most likely to be successful in this role? And once you do, then you can ask the question: where are they hiding? Where do they live? Where do they hang out? But if you don't define that, if you don't define exactly who they are, you're not going to be able to answer this question. A lot of people ask this question way too early before they even know what they really need, before they know what their business needs. Right. But we're going to save that for next time. And we're going to have somebody super special on the show to kind of go through that framework. Joe Ortiz, again, you saw him a few weeks ago. And he's a master at recruiting. He's so good at what he does. We're just very thankful to have him on the team. But he's going to be joining us. That'll probably happen in 3 weeks from now, Talent Density Part 2. So keep an eye out. I'll be announcing it on LinkedIn and all of our socials. But thank you, everybody, for coming, for showing up. I appreciate you. And until next time, keep chasing your next summit.